This podcast is only a 10-minute podcast that highlights the best kept secret of IO scholars, job recruiters, and community influencers. And most importantly, we want to provide you financial resources to go to college debt free and become financially savvy. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Maria Fernanda, and I'm the host of IO Scholarships. And today, to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, I have a very special guest. Her name is Gabriela Forter Cuevas. And actually, she's a young lady that I admire a lot. I had the pleasure to meet her several years ago. And I'm throwing all my talking points because this young lady is extraordinary. She applied for three of the most prestigious universities in the world, and she got accepted by the three of them, by Harvard Business, Harvard Kennedy, and Stanford Business School. And actually, she also is very interested in making an impact in the world. And the way that we connected is through her passion to advance careers for Latinas in STEM. Thank you, Gabriela, for being part of the show.
Thank you so much, Maria. El placer es mío. The pleasure is mine to be here.
Well, tell me a little bit more about your impressive career path. I know that you started working at some tech companies, leading the reality labs at Meta, and doing a lot of learning machine and artificial intelligence programs. And I'm very impressed because you come with a very strong background with the intersection between public policy and also leadership and business. And now that you are accepted in bi-costal schools, doing your MBA at Harvard and also at Stanford, you bring this wealth of knowledge, your bi-costal wealth of knowledge from two really different schools of business. So it's a pleasure to have you in my show and for you to share with our viewers your wisdom. So tell us about your career path and what you are doing right now in terms of, you mentioned that to me previously, that you're very interested in mental health, and that is so timely. So again, welcome to the show, and I'm looking forward to this engaging conversation.
Yay, I can't wait. Thank you so much. So I'll start off with a little bit of an overview of my background. And if you have more specific questions, we can dive in. So I was born and raised in Bakersfield, California, which is an agricultural community. I went to UCLA for undergrad, and I majored in global studies simply because I was interested in learning how does globalization work, economics, politics, culture, and I found it really fascinating to learn about different topics and having a global perspective on the past, present, and the future. And then a new minor had opened up at UCLA it was the entrepreneurship minor. And that's where I got exposure to business for the first time in my life. Prior to that, my parents and my community only worked in the public sector. And so this is where I learned what venture capital was, or like what a business plan was, what is a business model. And from there, I started to get really excited about how the private sector could be more efficient and cost effective in not only time-wise, but financially, to solve different problems. I've always been very mission-driven, socially minded, and so essentially I wanted to know what is the best way to make an impact at a biggest scale, most effectively. And so to do that, I realized I need to learn technology. Like, that is the way to make things grow. And I know you're very passionate about that, Maria, and that's what you've dedicated your life to doing, is making technology careers and degrees more accessible. So that's what led me essentially to my first job, my first career, which I worked at Deloitte Consulting for 2.5 years, specifically in their tech practice. That's where I got to learn, how do you build a system from beginning to end? How do you work? Number two, how do you work with clients? Understanding their needs, their requirements. How do you then translate those requirements from the client into something that a developer, a computer programmer can then create and build, like an engineer, into a physical product. And so I had to sit in between being understanding business needs and translating them into technology needs. And having no background in that, Deloitte really gave me a great opportunity to just start from scratch and learn on the job. And I'm happy to give advice about how I went about that, essentially just practicing really hard for the case interviews and doing a lot of repetition. And there's a lot of resources online about how to do a case interview. And there's technology kind of case interviews and then management consulting style interviews. And so I worked at Deloitte in the tech practice for 2.5 years. And then I decided, you know what, I want to dive even deeper into technology and go more, not only on different types of applications and systems, but I want to focus on the future. And what was the future and what is the future? Artificial intelligence. So I applied for a role and got it at Meta, which was where I worked for 2.5 years, as you mentioned. Switched around a couple of teams, but essentially was focused on building the assistant, which is like the Siri or Alexa for Facebook. And so what that meant was working with building machine learning models that could understand and produce language. So it could not only natural language understanding, but natural language generation, processing. And so that was really fun because, again, similar job function where I had to work in between engineers, product managers, as a project manager, a lot with operations, legal, and it's just very cross-functional. So it's a skill that I think a lot of people can have access to, just things that they can gain from undergrad by doing group projects and being interdisciplinary, like back my major. And then I did a quick summer in venture capital where I got to analyze different companies that would be a potential investment, only diverse founders, which was really fun. And then also while working at Meta, as you know, I had an edtech startup that I co-founded, which was really, I think, an embodiment of my own journey where I wanted to make careers and degrees in STEM more accessible to people like myself who didn't have any background or exposure to this growing up. And so through Xylo Academy, we created online videos that really demystified it and made it very simple to understand complex topics, as you know, like blockchain, robotics, energy storage, gene editing. But yeah, and so happy to explain more, but the dual degree now gives me the opportunity to kind of bridge those two passions of mine together, the social impact, the activism that I had growing up in Bakersfield, because I was very passionate about the farm worker movement growing up, Dolores Huerta, Cesar Chavez, but then also my passion for technology and how that's the way to solve problems, and leveraging it and being able to really understand it, so then I can then decide what's the best way to make a solution by working with public sector, private sector, social sectors. And so that's why I'm here now doing the dual degree.
Visit IOScholarships as we have access to thousands of STEM scholarships based on your unique ethnic background, waiting for you today. Some of them only require 2.5 GPA and no essay. Remember, the more you apply, the more chances you have to win. Apply today. So it's so important to understand how to basically integrate your career with mentors and people who can lift you up. So I was wondering, which are the tips that you will give to students that want to apply for their postgraduate scholarship to attend this?
Oh, so many tips, so many pieces of advice. Okay, number one is be committed and be all in. So for example, for me, for this dual degree, I've actually been planning on doing it for 5 years, like since undergrad at UCLA. And I think it really, every step that I took, whether it was my extracurricular activities, my professional career, it was all, I always had like in the back of my mind, how is this going to fit? How is this going to fit with my application? And so I think it's important to just, what that means is be intentional, know what you want, and then be focused on that. Because if you are distracted and you have a lot of different ideas, you just can't. I've seen it many times. So be committed, be focused, be intentional. Number two, you touched on this, is mentors. So I reached out to a lot of different people this is a great piece of advice, people who are not only 1 year above me, 2, 5, 10, 20. Why? Because they all have different perspective. People who are just a few years out can be more tactical and say like, oh, you're going to need to do, X, Y, Z. And then, for example, some people straight out of graduate school, they're paying their loans, so they're a little grumpy. But then the people who are maybe 5 or 10 years out, they've seen the ROI, the return on investment, and everybody I spoke to, every single person I spoke to said, do this grad degree. I didn't meet one person. So all the coffee chats, I probably had hundreds of coffee chats when I worked in consulting, at tech, and it's important to get diverse perspectives as well. So talking to those people and then trying to form a relationship with them. So that's also how, Maria, you and I met, right? I just messaged you on LinkedIn because you seemed inspiring to me, somebody who I would like to be.
I want to be like you, but I'm way older than you, so it's too late. But I learn more from younger people sometimes than that they have the wisdom.
Yeah, it's just important. So networking, but don't, people get uncomfortable with that idea of networking. Really see it as a way to form relationships. And just like you just illustrated, it can be a two-way relationship where we're both benefiting and helping each other and becoming friends. And so even like the people who helped me with my application for Stanford and Harvard, I sent them a text message just yesterday while I was sitting there during the orientation saying, thank you so much. You were my role model, you were my inspiration, and you believed in me. They read my essays, they did mock interviews with me. And it's important to be grateful and show that appreciation and pay it forward. So I yesterday was on a panel helping, prospective students. So I'm trying my best to also answer LinkedIn messages from prospective people. Also happy to do that for whoever's listening on this podcast. So form relationships, get help. The third piece of advice I would give is to know yourself. How you might know yourself? Journaling and mindfulness activities. I know they might seem a little cheesy, but truly doing meditation, yoga, taking time to be calm and just asking yourself, why do I really want these degrees? And what do I want, again, in the short term, or what do I want in the program while I'm there in school? What do I want, 5 years, 10 years? How is this going to change my life or impact me? And you just need to know, and there can be different answers. There can be a professional reason and personal reason of what you want out of it. So for me, for example, I was very clear, like I love school. So I knew I was going to thrive. And I was like, I want to give myself this life experience. Just like when people travel, it's a gift to yourself to experience something new. For me, this is like an experience that I'm giving myself because I love meeting different students from across the world, different backgrounds, experiences, talking to professors who are immensely passionate about whatever field of study that they focus on, and just being in that whole ecosystem, microcosm of intellectual excitement is something that I knew I wanted to be there again before I go back into my career and have a regular job. And then I also knew that I wanted to have a network post-graduation that I would have access to not only my class, but all classes, past and future. And that's just the network. And as you may have seen in my other video, when I really summarize for me what the value of these degrees are, it's access to network and capital, if really, really succinctly. A lot of other reasons that I can give, but to be really concise, it's those two things. And the capital piece is that I think it would be difficult to fundraise without having these kind of connections, whether it's from venture capitalists or other strategic philanthropy organizations. Everything in this world is relationship driven, and these degrees and give me access to these communities that I plan to take advantage of in my career in the future.
That's very wise what you just said. Access to opportunities is the key, and that's why I founded actually IO Scholarship. I wanted this to be a one-stop platform for students to look for scholarships and be debt free. So I was very intentional that I want to give them access to opportunities. But I'm very aware that you put the hard work. I mean, you are really good at balancing your personal life and also professional life. I saw that you travel to amazing places, and that actually gives you more inspiration and revigorate you to tackle, Harvard and Stanford. So I firmly believe in a balance, and yes, the power of networking. And I can't thank you enough for connecting with me, because I'm seeing your path and I'm being so motivated to do even bigger things, because it's very important to network with people with the same mindset of like trying to not only, it's not only everything about revenue, but creating an impact. What will you leave behind in the world? I want to leave a community where my daughter feels comfortable to interact with other students that want to pursue careers in STEM. So, what is the legacy that we are leaving?
Yeah.
I will leave that to the next episode. But I will leave the viewers with another interesting question that I have for Gabriela. So, Gabriela, if you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't ask you? So we'll leave that to the second part.
All right.